All right. Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing? Let me make sure I have this framed up right. That should be good. How's everybody doing? I see a few people joining. We'll wait to get started. I know there'll be a few more people joining eventually. So no rush, but you can start putting the questions in the chat. I'll start once a few more people get here. I know I started like a minute or two early, so no rush on that. Cool. Well, this is really exciting. Really all we're trying to do is just ask questions. This is super casual. It can be professional related, data analyst related, tech related, just any questions that you have that you want answered. And we'll go from there. But I'm super excited. I got my wife listening right over there. I got my cats listening, so I got a full house over here at least. Hey, John, how's it going? It is going well. I'm really excited. I enjoy doing these live Q&As because I just really like answering people's questions and actually getting to talk to you guys and stuff. So I'm really excited. I'm excited for tonight. And yeah, go for it. You can start asking questions right now. And as people join, there'll be a lot more questions, I'm sure. But feel free to start. You can be the first one to kick us off. And if nobody asks questions, I had a community post out there where people could, ask questions beforehand. And so, if nobody asks any questions at all, I'll just revert to those and we'll be all right. Cool. Michaela, how's it going? There's no problem. I enjoyed reviewing your resume. Let's see. Just saw your first video. Thank you, Ashutosh. That's a cool name. Thank you. I appreciate it. Mohammed, thank you. I appreciate you, joining the community. It's a growing one. I'm glad that my videos are helpful. Mohammed asks, and here's our first question: what should be the depth of Python one should know for data analyst role? I think this is a really good question because Python is so broad. There are so many things that you can do with it. And it continues to grow every single day. Really the things that I would focus on, especially at the beginning to get really good with, are things like pandas, NumPy, and you can add a data visualization library as well, something like Matplotlib or Seaborn. I would focus on those heavily at first. If your company or whoever you're working with uses something different, you can always learn that. But I think that's a great place to start. So that's what I always kind of recommend. Hey Jay, thanks for joining. Chioma, cool name. Kizor, that's a cool name. I like that. Thanks for joining. John asks, what's your advice on contract to hire as a data analyst, the red flags? So this is a really good question. I don't think a lot of people think about that when they're starting out. They think that it's mostly full-time, that you just get hired full-time, or it's like, hourly. So you just do contract work, hourly pay. Believe it or not, a lot of full-time jobs start off as contract to hires. And what that means is you sign on through typically a recruiting company for like 6 months, 3 months. And then after that time, they can then choose to hire you, which is a really good safeguard for the company, because if you're really bad, they don't have to, go through all the paperwork and all the legal work to get rid of you. They can just say, no, we don't want to hire you. And then that's it. So I actually really like I like that type of hiring as a whole, because it gives the employers kind of a taste of what your skills are and can you back up your resume? Because a lot of times people do lie on their resume. They're very good in interviews and they can get a job, but they don't actually perform. And so I think it is very reasonable for a company to do that. I would not be scared by that in any way. I've had 2 jobs that have been contract to hires, and both times they hired me on full time. So I would not be scared of that unless you don't think you can back up your resume or what you're saying in an interview. I don't think there are any really red flags in doing that. It just depends on if you can do what you say you can do. So let's keep going down. Let's see. Okay, Michaela asks, I'm not interested in tech/coding. I don't mind a little coding, but my main focus is in healthcare research. Really cool. I'm in the healthcare area as well. Is it still suggested to become a data analyst? Trying to figure out if I should pursue this. I think that for a data analyst role, you're going to need to know at least a little bit of coding, whether that's Python or R, or if you consider SQL programming, which I don't think most people do, but some consider it. I think you need to know the basics at least when you're starting. You can always get started. I tell people you can always get started if you're really good at SQL and Excel, and you can get started with those things. But as you get higher, as you continue to advance in your career, you will probably need to pick up some coding, at least a little bit. So I do think you should pursue it. I think that even if you're not gung-ho about coding in general, it's definitely a great place to start. And you start with the basics and then keep building from there. And as you are in the job, I think you'll learn a lot more than you think you will. Let's see. Hey KK, it says, she asks, how did you find health data specific projects to show your skills? Health data specific, there's lots of data sets out there. You can get them, EMR data sets through like Kaggle or Google or something like that. Some really good ones that I would focus on that I think in the healthcare area, because that's where I am, that I think really show your abilities are if you work with something like claims data. Claims data is super, super important. That's where all the money, a lot of the money comes from in healthcare. I would also focus on things like ICD and CPT codes. That's another thing that a lot of healthcare people want you to know. So if you can show the knowledge, the domain knowledge in your project, that just shows that you have an understanding of what an employer wants. And so, if you know the jargon, if you know what they're kind of looking for, I would base your project around those things. Again, I would say claims, ICD codes, CPT codes. Let me think of if I can think of any more. HCPCS codes, things like that. If you base your project around things that you're going to be doing in an actual job, that's a really kind of a smart thing to do. All right, let me see. Let me scroll down. Hey, Daniel, thanks for the question. And thanks for watching. He says that he's about to start a data management, data analytics program at WGU. He's about to buy a laptop. Should we get a MacBook Pro or a Microsoft laptop? I don't have any preference on these. I think MacBooks are super great laptops. That's why everybody has them. I personally use Windows for I don't use Windows, but I use Windows. I use like Microsoft everything. So to me, Microsoft laptop would make more sense. And that's what my company uses. We're a Microsoft shop. So, I recommend that just personally, but maybe you like MacBook Pros more. That's up to you. Let's see. So Caden, thanks for watching. He asks, or she, I'm not sure, but they ask, I've spoken with you before through emails. Very cool. I was wondering if you could explain the difference between data science / analytics and machine learning. The biggest thing really is the machine learning statistics side, I would say. Data analysts do use some statistics, but it's a lot more in-depth, a lot more advanced, and the machine learning definitely comes into that statistics side of things. And so, typically data analysts are just not going to work with machine learning just in general. So, even if I'm on a data science team, I don't use machine learning. The only people who use the machine learning are the data scientists. So, I really think that's the biggest thing. The only other thing, there is another part of it. Data science typically know a little bit more on the ETL side of things. Depending on the team, a data scientist can be by themselves doing a lot of the data wrangling, data collection, data cleaning. Analysts do that work as well, but not to the scale typically that a data scientist does, because they most of the time or sometimes can be doing stuff like with free text that a lot of data analysts won't be doing. So they'll be using NLP, the machine learning in NLP. The data analysts just don't do typically, like I said. So that's I think that's the big difference. Chioma or Kioma. The best books to start with, I don't have them at the top of my head, but there are 2 books that I recommend. And if you go into any description of any video that I have, even I think the description of this video, you can find the book recommendations. I believe I may have taken those off and put them somewhere else. If I don't, email me and I'll get those to you. So let's see. Chirantan Patel asks, how can we do practice of SQL for a job? That's a really good question, because I think a lot of people get in this cycle of doing courses and keep practicing the basics of SQL, like the basic syntax. The biggest thing that you can do to practice your SQL to get job ready is projects. And so in my very last video, I talked about how you can do some type of personal project or portfolio project. That's what this is referring to. So uploading an actual data set, something that has dirty data in it that you can use SQL for to actually import the data, clean the data, format it, create the views, and then start building the building blocks for your visualizations. That to me is the fastest way that you can learn SQL and practice it for an actual job. Just learning the syntax is really hard to understand the concepts until you actually have a problem to solve. And so that's my biggest advice for that one. Damon, hey, how's it going? His question is, do you have an opinion on the current market for entry-level data analysts given the current rate of unemployment and competition? Yes, I think that it is very oversaturated, especially at the entry level. Once you get to the mid-level, senior level, it is 10 times easier to get a job right now. The entry-level market is just so saturated because a lot of people are losing jobs. A lot of people right out of college are kind of scrambling to find jobs. And so I think that right now is a really tough time. There are ways that you can kind of stand above the rest. And just real quick would be portfolio projects, create a website like a GitHub or your own personal website, and really make your resume look good, stand out, highlight the skills that are really important, and make your resume shine, because if you don't get to the interview, you're not going to get the job. So resume and portfolio projects are my biggest advice to kind of cutting through that entry-level job market. Ryan asks, how much of an understanding do we need in Python/R before we try to start careers in data? So R and Python are just tools. They're just tools to analyze data. And there's so many other tools. There's so many other tools that you can use that are already kind of packaged for you. Like with Python and R, you can do a lot of that work in like Tableau or in things like, a lot of the database stuff, SQL. So for Python, you could use, sometimes they use like data frames and stuff like that. You can do that stuff in SQL. For the visualizations, you can do things like Power BI, things that are kind of more user-friendly, quicker to pick up, quicker to learn. So I don't think you need to know those. I did not start learning Python until I already had my first job. I was already 2 years into my job as a data analyst. I was just really good at SQL, and I picked up SQL really fast. And that's what I found employers really cared about more than the Python. And so I started learning Python because I wanted to be more marketable. I wanted to get a higher paying job. And I did find that because I did need to know Python for the job I'm in. But, I don't think you need to know it super, super well. So if you're going to learn one or the other, I personally recommend Python. I've used it the most. That's what I find most people use for a lot of things. It's very transferable to different positions as well, whereas R is a little bit more specific to, it has a narrow field for jobs. That's just my opinion. Andre says, I know people have done Leakcode for practice. Yeah, Leakcode is actually a really good one. I will say I recommend that as well. That's a really good call out. So Leakcode has a free version that you can get just a bunch of practice problems. If you are applying for jobs, you should at least be able to do the easy. On Leakcode, the easy are actually pretty easy. They're fairly simple. It's the basics. The intermediate is what actually gets what I would consider a little bit hard for most people. And so if you can start doing the intermediate and consistently getting those questions right, great way to practice. And I do recommend that as well, for sure. let's say, Renee, I think, or Rini, not sure how to say that, but I apologize, says, if my programming skills are not strong, should I become a data analyst? If you don't like programming and you don't really have kind of the drive to learn it, it's a toss-up. It depends on how far you want to go as an actual data analyst. If you just want to get an entry-level data analyst job and then we'll go into management or pivot jobs or something like that, you don't really need to know programming. I think programming, especially for when you get further along in your career, 3, 4, or 5 years, you're going to need to start picking up some programming skills. So you don't need it to become a data analyst. Like I said, there are some package things that you can do, but that's my take on it. DG asks, how is COVID impacting your work effectiveness and career, assuming you are remote? Multidimensional question, skill up, grading, social relationships, promotability, stress. That's a great question. COVID has changed everything. I used to be in person, working with everybody, going to people's desks every day, really building a strong community and really building those relationships with my colleagues and my bosses and their bosses. It has changed that a lot. Everything's done by phone or Zoom, or we use Microsoft Teams. Everything's done that way. Everything's done by emails. It's a lot more personable. And I'm a personable person. I think that stress-wise, I don't know. Stress-wise, I can't say if it's gone down, it's gotten better or worse. I think that the stress is just different because now I'm, at home with kids and, I have to be in meetings during the day. I also have to take care of the kids, and then I stay up late at night to do my work. So the stress is just different, but the stress is still there. Promotability, I think it's more difficult to get promoted via remote, just because it's harder to show that you're working effectively. It's harder to show your personal skills. I think you just have to work harder to get promoted. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. Good question. CHV, oops, I accidentally skipped down. Says, do you think this field is getting oversaturated? So many articles and people talking about this is the hot new job along with data scientists. Like I said before, I absolutely think that it's starting to get oversaturated in the entry level. And there are so many ways to get through that. I mentioned some before, and I actually want to mention one more. I think something that's really maybe undervalued is recruiters. And I know I talk about this a lot on my channel because I believe in it so much. Because at my job, when we're trying to hire, we have a specific recruiting company that we use. Lots of companies do that. And you need to be able to work with recruiters, and you need to be able to market yourself and get out there and actually get interviews. And just applying to 1,000 jobs, on Indeed or Glassdoor or LinkedIn is not going to get you many results. You might get an interview, 2, 3, 4 if you're lucky out of 1,000. And it's just the way it is. So if you are in that rut of you can't find a job, highly recommend working with recruiters. I made a whole video on that. So, if you want to know more, just check that out. Heap Nguyen or Nguyen, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but question is, what am I expected to know to get a data analyst internship? When I hear internship, I think mostly college. Like you're right out of college, you're in college and you're trying to get like a junior internship or a senior level internship. You should be actively taking classes in data analyst related things. They want to see that that's what you're learning and you want to apply those things in a job. I never did any internship for data analysis. When you think about it, they're going to want somebody who at least is taking those courses related. You have a major that's related, that they can use you in your internship to get, those really low hanging fruits, and you can get some experience, get some skills. So, you should know the basics of the basics. You should probably have some SQL, probably some Python. If you're taking in college, you're probably taking other things like Java and other core programming skills. That's probably what they're looking for. Let's see. So CHV asks, so majority of the work a lot of data scientists do is similar to the Twitter data scraping project that you demonstrated in using NLP to extract that data. I wouldn't say that not every data scientist is going to use, Python to scrape data from Twitter. Like he's just so you know, if you haven't watched that video, I scraped data from Twitter using Python, and then I brought it into basically, NLP. I used NLP to clean it up, and then I built a visualization off of it using, I think, Matplotlib and Seaborn. Just off the top of my head, that's all I remember. But I don't think that is the type of work that a lot of data scientists are doing. They're using a lot more machine learning models. They're going to be using things like scikit-learn or Keras or things like that. They're going to be doing, data science, what you traditionally think of like data scientist work. That is a lot of what they're doing. I don't think they're doing I don't think everybody's doing NLP is what I'm trying to get at. So that was just kind of an example of something fun you can do to show your skills above and beyond what a typical data analyst does. It'd be a really cool project on your resume. And I give you full license to take that and run with it and make it your own project. I think it was just a cool project to do. Cody asks, I use Excel casually, but not in a professional setting. What skills should I learn? And do you know a course, Udemy Con, that would be best to learn Excel for data analysts? For Excel, there are a few specific things that I do recommend learning. Things like conditional formatting, something that, I recommend you at least know how to use conditional formatting. There's a lot of things within that you can use. So that's one thing. Know how to, remove duplicates, create pivot tables, use VLOOKUP. These are things that you'll probably actually use. And so those are the ones I recommend learning. Just, but in terms of courses, Khan Academy actually does a really good job teaching Excel. And I like Khan Academy a lot. And so, yeah, I would start there. There is one on Udemy. I need to go look it up, but I have taken one on Udemy that I really liked that I can definitely share with you. Just send me an email. I'm sure my email's down below if you want to send me an email with just reminding me to send that to you, and I'll get that to you. Yash asks, Python topics for data analysis. There are a ton. Just the skills that are needed, kind of what an employer might be looking for. The number one thing that I recommend that you start learning within Python is pandas, because you're going to be working with data frames. Pandas is used to merge, columns. It's used to clean up the data. And it's just a super, super good tool, and a lot of people and a lot of teams, companies use it. And so I highly recommend learning that first. And then something like NumPy is another great way to go. It's definitely one that is used in the field. It's not just one that you will learn in a course. You'll actually use it in your job. And so those are the two that I recommend with Python, at least. As far asks, how much data science and algorithms should I know to be a data analyst? Not a ton. I wouldn't focus on that, especially at the beginning. If you're just trying to get off the ground and get a job, don't focus on that stuff at all. And that might be controversial. I don't know. I would 100% stick with the basics of SQL should be the majority of what you're learning. The reason I say that is because in an interview, they're going to ask for the technical questions. Most of the time for entry-level jobs, they're going to ask SQL. And so you need to have that knowledge of SQL, at least, an intermediate level of SQL in order to get through that initial stage to getting an entry-level job in order to work your way up. You can learn the data science stuff, the algorithms once you get into the job. But, if you start learning that stuff now and you can't actually get a job, it'll never be useful. So that's my advice. Chirantan Patel. I'm going to mess that name up every time. I'm super sorry. I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. I'll just call you Patel. Patel asks, how can I say I'm good in SQL? I mean, from your opinion, what things I need to know very well in SQL? In order to say you're good, I mean, it just varies on, what kind of job you're going to get. For an entry-level job, you really just need to know the basics super well. So select, from, where, group by, order by, and then know how to do aggregate functions within the select statement, know how to do joins, know how to do case statements. These are the absolute fundamentals that you're going to do, that you'll be using specifically in SQL probably 90% of the time. That's what you'll use. That's what you'll use within SQL. If you want to be really good, I would learn things like CTEs, learn how to use stored procedures. You can venture into maybe the development side of things, like creating databases, creating tables, the data modeling aspect within SQL. So I think that's definitely more advanced, though. You don't need to know the beginning. You need to know the basics super well, though. I can't stress that enough. How can I build my, Jay asks, how can I build my portfolio in an entry-level job? For an entry-level job, sorry, I said that wrong. For an entry-level job, my biggest advice is, I would recommend at least one full project where you take data from a source, put it into SQL, clean it up, and then build a visualization off of that. At least one project that's taking it from start to finish. And you can use so many things for that. You can use SSIS, which is something that isn't super hard to learn the basics of, or you can just take a data set. SSIS is going to actually extract the data, take it in, whereas a data set you can just import. It's super easy. And then in SQL, you're cleaning up the data, you're formatting the data how you want it. And then I recommend something just like Power BI to create the visualization, or if you know Python, all the better, use that. But you can also segment your projects. So do a project just on visualizations. Like you have a data set, it's already clean, it's already done. They don't need to know your whole process before that. And show them like 10 different visualizations that you can do based on the data, and talk them through that in your project. And you can do that with all the skills, that I just mentioned. Let me see. All right, scrolling back up because I just skipped a ton. I apologize if I skip yours. Do you still like the data analysis and presentation skills Coursera specialization, even though you no longer list it? I'd have to see which one you're talking about. But the ones that I listed on Coursera that I did in the video for best courses, I took that and I loved it. And if that's the one you're talking about, 100% that one is a really, really in-depth, good course to take. So yeah, I would recommend that one. So Chris asked, and I kind of skimmed this one before I asked it, or I read it. But Chris asks, can you talk about the relationship between data analysis, project management, and business analysis in the job market? And is it worthwhile to have skills in all, or should you choose one and specialize? That is a really, really good question. And here's why I say, here's what I'll say on this, and take it with a grain of salt, because this is from my perspective and kind of how I became a data analyst. When I first started, I was at a really small company, under 50 people, and I was a data analyst, but I worked with clients. I worked with we didn't even have project managers. So I kind of took that role a little bit. My boss was more the project manager, but I still did a lot of that work. So I'm doing a lot of client-based stuff. I'm working in SQL and doing a lot of the really technical stuff. I think personally that if you can learn all of those things and understand how it works and understand the thought process behind each one of those positions, it's way more valuable than just getting in and having a very narrow understanding of the job. And I don't want to say you shouldn't specialize in something. I obviously am a data analyst, so I specialize in data analysis, but I understand the business analyst side of things, the project management side of things, because I had to do it in a previous job. So, if you go straight to a large company, typically you're going to get placed in a very narrow position. And that's what I'm in right now. I'm in a narrow position at a very large company. And I'm happy that I did that after I got that experience to do all the things. Because now in my position, I can speak to a lot of different areas. I can speak to the project management side. I give ideas, and I think that it's very well received because I do have that experience at a smaller company. So, whether you should specialize or be more general, I think just depends on the company you're in. But I do recommend at some point in your career working at a smaller company where you can wear many hats. That forced me to learn so much so quickly. And I didn't really have time to relax and just kind of take it easy. I had to really push myself at the beginning. And so I recommend that for most people. So Michaela asks, I think being a research assistant and a data analyst is so different. I would rather be in a research than program. I think she means programming. If the market is already saturated and I'm not passionate about coding, maybe not. What do you think? Sorry, so lost about it. So I'm going to try to summarize that as you're thinking about being a research assistant. Is that what it was? Yeah, research assistant or a data analyst. I really can't give too much advice on that. That those are kind of different career paths. But if you really just don't like coding and you don't see yourself liking coding in the future, it may not be for you. I can't say for certain. If you really just don't see yourself enjoying it at all and you don't want to get into that thing, maybe you just stay at an entry level, mid-level position at a company that doesn't use coding. That might solve your problems. All right. As far asks, for minimum, how much does it take to become an average level at data analysis so I can sit in company interviews with confidence? That's really tough because data analysis is so broad, and every company treats data analysts differently. Some treat data analysts more on the ETL side. So they're going to be doing like data acquisition, the data cleaning, the data modeling, along with the programmers. Some companies are going to treat them just like data visualization experts, where they're just doing the data visualizations. So every job description is going to be very different. I think that, especially for an average level of data analysis, if that's how you want to say it, you need to know, the basic tools. You need to know SQL. You need to probably know Excel pretty well, and you need to know a data visualization tool like Tableau, Power BI, Python. It's kind of similar to what I've been saying earlier, but it's hard to say what an average level is, or what company is going to look at how a company is going to look at a data analyst. So Damon asks, without watching your video on recruiters, do you recommend any specific firms for this niche role? I do have a small list of recruiters only for the Dallas area. I don't believe they're global companies, but these are recruiters that I've worked with personally. And, I think what you need to do if you are wanting to work with recruiters is to actually just look up recruiters in your area, call them, talk them through your scenario. They are 100% willing to talk with you and listen to your story, listen to what you're looking for, and they will tell you if they have jobs like that or if they, staff those types of jobs. So I would just call, get out there, and see what's really out there. It's hard to say, but yes, there are absolutely IT specific firms that do recruiting for like software engineers, data scientists, data analysts, that kind of stuff. Wait, where was I? Actually, I went down again. I went way far down. I apologize. So Vladislav, I butchered that. I'm so sorry. Said, hi, Alex. Are you happy in the data field? I love data. I'm obsessed with it. I think it was the exact career change that I needed. I was working, as many of you know, I was working at a behavioral health hospital, and I think that if I had stayed that course and continued down that path, I don't think I would have advanced that much, like to where I am today compared to, I don't think I would have gotten as far. I wouldn't be making probably half as much. And just the work in general, I find extremely interesting. So I'm super happy in it. And he also asked, are you familiar with SaaS? Yes, our company uses SaaS. I don't personally use it that much. I kind of dabble in it at our company, but I think it's a cool tool. I think it's worth knowing. It wouldn't be at the top of my list to learn if you're looking to get an entry level job. That's kind of like company specific. Not every company uses SaaS. Try to keep it broad at the beginning, kind of thing. So Taylor asked, any example questions that you like to personally give? I think, are you talking about like interviews, like interview questions? If you're talking interview questions, which I'm just going to assume you are, I like to view how they think about things, but also I like to see if they know how to write it. So in a technical interview, I'm asking SQL, or I'm asking questions in SQL, and I like to see, at least for the positions that we're hiring for, typically mid-level positions. So do they know joins? So asking a question, here's two tables, here's the schema, here's the output that I'm looking for. How do you get that with this table? And I have them write it. And I typically don't look for a specific version of SQL, although we use SQL Server at my company. If their syntax is MySQL, PostgreSQL, Oracle, I understand. I've used them. I understand them, so it doesn't really bother me if they write it in a different type. And then for kind of the more critical thinking, it's an example of like, how would you, here's your schema. How would you go about cleaning this data? Like, how do you clean data? Something generic like that, just to see if they can talk me through that process, to see that they have that experience. Is just kind of an example of some technical stuff that somebody might ask. So Luis asks, how do you prepare for a final round interview? And what are some great questions to ask the hiring team? That is a really good question. I like that one because first off, you're assuming that you got to the final round, and I love the confidence because you should always be going for that final round interview because you want to get the job. So you already did amazing in the first round. You're at the second round interview or the final round interview. How do you prepare for it? I think especially if you get, you should already have done this in your initial, but especially if you get to the second round, you need to be looking up this company, maybe even messaging people on LinkedIn who work at this company, and just asking, what kind of projects are you guys working on? Do you guys face any challenges? See if they can give you any information, because the more information you have, the better you can cater your skills to what they're looking for. And so, let's say, they use SQL Server, they use Power BI, you use MySQL and Tableau. You can then preemptively go ahead and, look over Power BI and just kind of understand it better. And then instead of MySQL, which is what you're used to working in, you can kind of look into SQL Server, understanding how it's formatted differently, and then speak to the projects and things that they're working on at that company. It will absolutely do you wonders if you do that research beforehand. So, and what questions should you ask the hiring team? I think that you should always ask the basics of, excuse me. What are the challenges that you guys are facing, just to understand. And then, as it's supposed to be a conversation. So you don't just ask a question and go, okay, you say, what are the challenges you're facing? And then when they tell you that challenge, you always back it up with, well, it sounds like you're looking for someone who really knows, this skill really well. I have that skill. I think that'd be a really good fit. I actually have a list that I was making for questions, or I have a list somewhere for questions. It's hard to think off the top of my head what those questions are. If you email me, I will give you the list if I can find that. But definitely have some questions lined up that are unique that they won't answer just generically during the conversation or during the interview, because then at the end you'll have no questions. It'll be kind of awkward. Renee or Rini asks, as you said earlier that you require programming for data analyst, how strong should my programming be, beginner or advanced level? Definitely beginner. It's an entry-level job. You should not be expecting yourself to be, advanced level. Otherwise, you'd be going for a mid-level job. But, if you're trying to make yourself super marketable and you want to make really advanced projects for your portfolio to get an entry-level job, all the better. If you can do the advanced stuff, do the advanced stuff. I just don't think you need it. So let's see. As far as, can you tell the sequence in which I should learn each tool required for data analysis? Yes. Here is what I recommend to every single person who is trying to start from scratch and they're trying to become a data analyst quickly. I think you should spend 80% of your time learning SQL first. Within the first month, learning SQL, and then about 5 to 10% learning Excel. And then 5 to 10%, again, just depends on just your generalities of Tableau or Power BI. I highly recommend investing most of your time into SQL at first. The reason behind that, again, is something I said earlier, which is typically you are not going to get a technical question on something like Excel. You're probably not going to get a technical question on Tableau or Power BI. Maybe, but most of the time it's going to be SQL. And so if you want to get into a job, you got to learn SQL well. So that's what I recommend. And then, within that, like month 2, you should drop your SQL pretty substantially. You want to drop that to maybe 50% now instead of 80, because you want to start then picking up the visualization stuff even more. But you want to start off with SQL really hard to really understand that, and be ready for the technical questions in an interview. Okay, and they also asked where to start learning if you're a beginner in data analysis. Apart from SQL, what else should I focus on? Like I said, Excel, some type of visualization tool. And if you want to, if you're looking for some free tools or free resources for data analysis and those core skills, highly recommend things like Khan Academy. Something that I will be putting in a future video is, and I know I just said beginner, but a little bit more advanced, intermediate to advanced levels. Actually, Kaggle has a really good data analysis course, and it's actually really in depth. And I went through that whole thing like 2 years ago, and it is amazing. So it does take you through the beginner stuff, but it gets pretty advanced really quickly. But yeah, Khan Academy is a great place to start. And I have a whole video on free courses, free places to find things. And YouTube is a great place as well. I just throw that out there. Mathematics, question mark. Yash. Yeah, you need to know some math. I think that people vastly over exaggerate how much math you need to know, because some people are like, man, you need to know calculus, and you need to know, predictive analysis and all the algorithms and all this stuff. It really just, I don't agree with that. Some people will say that, and maybe that is for like, Wall Street level, entry level data analyst. That's not me. As you can tell, I'm not like, somebody who came from MIT or know those super advanced things. So personally, I don't think that's something that, most people should be worried about. If you can do basic calculations, basic math, I think you're fine. So I wouldn't get too hung up on that. I wouldn't think that's a deal breaker for most people who can do math in general. If your math is terrible, really do some soul searching on that one. Let's see. I'm trying to skim for the questions. I'm sorry if I skip any, because I have a lot of questions here. This one says, what would you suggest? Go through Wes McKinney's book or take up a good Udemy course for Python? I think for most beginners, at least, you should just go through, and I guess it depends on your learning style. I am a very visual learner. I need something in front of me that I can look at and have concrete example and copy it and literally do exactly what they're doing, so I can write it out and understand it better. So for that, I recommend doing a course. Excuse me. I recommend doing a course. It's just more visual to me. I have read 2 books, and in the end, they just weren't 100% my thing. But I did learn quite a bit from it. It's just after a while, I was, after I got like 3/4 of the way through, I was like, man, I probably could have learned most of this in a course. But again, books typically go a little bit more in depth, which I do like. It's just, I learn quicker through courses. And so I recommend courses. Damon says, I live in Fort Worth. Do you mind if I reach out and get your recommendations? Yeah, if you want to send me an email, send me your resume. If you're applying to a certain job and you need a recommendation, if I feel like you're a good fit for the job, of course, I'll give you a recommendation. I have no problem with that. And again, yes, if you're from Fort Worth, message me and I'll give you those recruiting companies that I've worked with. If you want that, just email me. Says Balak Rishna asks, can you please make a video on the skill path followed by the followed by the data analyst. Yeah, the skill path is definitely a video that I'm gonna make, because I know for me, I got really caught up, especially at the beginning, really caught up in courses. And there is a breaking point where you want to stop taking courses and you want to start doing projects. And a lot of people get in that cycle of courses. And so you want to have a path to take. And so I 100% am going to make a video on that, of exactly, month by month, what you should be focusing on, and when the breaking point is, at what level you should start working on your projects for your portfolio. That's a great question. So Asfar asks, do you believe data analysis and data scientist is another new job revolution in tech / data world? I think it's already become, a completely new, well, data analysis is not new, but it's data analysis, data science, especially data science, has been booming probably the past 8 years. I mean, it's been just kind of unprecedented how popular that job has become. And data analysis has been rising with it, kind of in its coattails, I want to say, just not as much limelight. There isn't as much interest in it because people look at the salaries first. And so they see the high data scientist salaries and they immediately want to go learn advanced machine learning, advanced this. It's very tough. It's a very, very competitive field. You have to work really hard in it. Let me see. Do you build dashboards, and which visualization tools do you use in your current job? In my current job, no, I do not build our dashboards. We have, I think their title is business intelligence analyst, I think is their title, who do all of our visualizations. So in my previous job, I did a lot of visualizations. Again, I had a hat for everything, and I did a lot of dashboards. And I think at our previous job, we used ClickView. In our current job, we used to use ClickView. Now we do, I think, everything in Power BI. So Power BI, again, Microsoft Shop, lots of companies are Microsoft Shop. Lots of companies use ClickView, Tableau, Power BI. There's a few other tools, but those are kind of the main ones that people will build dashboards with. And dashboards are super useful, especially if you have a client-facing website that clients can log into and see their data. Dashboards are amazing. Let's see. Okay, this is fantastic. I'm finally catching up on questions. It's I think it's Ulysses asks, how hard do you consider being a data analyst is? How hard do I think it is? If I ask my wife how hard it is, she's probably going to say it's really, really complicated, because I love to talk to her about it. And I talk to her about the technical stuff, and she, that's not her world. That's not her world at all. And so for her, I imagine it'd be extremely difficult. And I just know her really well. It'd be near impossible for her to learn all these skills probably within a year and get a job. So for her, extremely difficult. For people who have a genuine interest in the field, it is hard to learn the skills, granted, but if you give yourself 3-4 months, you can learn the skills and you can feel comfortable in it. And I think if you give it enough time, it becomes a lot easier. Especially if you watch my videos and you listen to everything I say and do everything I say, it's much easier, I promise. Next question is, do you have any opinion on the financial analyst field? Adding to that, do you know if being an analyst can lead to a quant? Or if they're the same thing. So for people who don't know what a quant is a very, I think typically, I'm not an expert in that field, but I've watched people who do that type of work, or I've looked into it. Quant is very finance related, and they are extremely heavily on the mathematical side, and they work with data to find trends, to predict stock markets and stuff like that. And quants get paid a ton of money. And a lot of them work on Wall Street and stuff like that. And probably some of you know more than I do about that. But financial analyst, I don't believe is the exact same thing. I think a quant is a lot more in depth. But financial analyst as a whole, you're analyzing financial data. It's not going to be so much different than a data analyst, except the domain knowledge. So you're going to have a lot different domain knowledge than typical data analyst, like I'm in healthcare, so I work in the healthcare field, pharmaceuticals, that kind of stuff. If I were trying to be a financial analyst, I would need to learn a whole nother domain that I just don't have experience in. So if they were just looking for somebody who knew, the skills, I could get a job there. But if they're looking for someone who has that domain knowledge, that's what a financial analyst really needs to know. That's kind of different than a data analyst. Let me see. Okay, sorry, skimming these questions again. Yeah, I'm just skipping some of these questions. I've already answered some of them, so I don't want to keep answering the same question because I only have 10 more minutes, and then I gotta get off. So 10 minutes and we're up. So let me see. Business analyst or data analyst, how do you know which one is for you? I think and again, I think it depends on the company, but if you really like the technical side of things, if you really like doing the coding, you like working in the databases, I recommend a data analyst position. And if you're good at it, especially. If you are more on the client-facing stuff, you really just kind of like working with a little bit of SQL, mostly Excel kind of work, I would recommend a business analyst. That's just a very vast generalization. So that's what I think on that. Let me see. Okay. I've recently got a job as a data analyst, but then I have a tough time understanding the company's data. Any idea how to do better at that is basically what they're trying to say. My biggest advice is to really talk to the people who understand the data. When I first got into healthcare data side, it was very different than what I knew in the actually working in the healthcare side. So when I was working at a behavioral health hospital, very different working on the data side. And so you need somebody who already knows that stuff to kind of mentor you and teach you. And you just have to be friendly. That's kind of that building relationships, building connections. You can also do research on your own, but I think if somebody can sit there and explain it to you, who's working with the same data that you are, that's invaluable. And so I recommend just striking it up with somebody over coffee, asking if they'll kind of show you, teach you some of the stuff, ask specific questions and kind of get a mentor basically. James asks, I am an electrical engineer grad student now working as a software engineer. Very cool. Oh, working on a master's. Very cool. In my master's classes, I had to take one on databases. We learned SQL. I really liked working with big data. Is software engineering an okay degree? Software engineering is a fantastic degree to get. Some of the stuff that you're going to learn, a lot of the stuff that you're going to learn, especially for SQL, for software engineering, is most likely going to be super advanced for a typical data analyst. You're going to be working with probably the ETL side of things, database management. You could even probably learn some DBA stuff. It's going to be really advanced stuff for SQL, where you probably don't need to know that for most data analyst positions. So you're probably at a really good place, especially if you have a master's in it. You're going to be set up really well to get a data analyst position. You just need to make sure that you have those other skills. Software engineers sometimes go a lot more onto the programming side, and they're not doing as much, querying in SQL, working in things like Tableau and Power BI. You typically don't work as much in that. So just learn those skills supplementally or as a supplement to what you're already learning. Rutvi asks, how to practice real world SQL problems, and do you recommend any websites or courses? I think that is the best thing that you can do really to learn. You can only learn the basics for so long. You can only learn the intermediate stuff for so long before you need to practice. And I answered this earlier, but I'll just repeat it. I recommend just taking a data set, working with that data set in SQL and cleaning the data and getting it ready for visualizations in SQL. That is not as easy to do not as easy to do as you think. So try it out. And if you can do it, great. If you can't, you'll have to research how to do it and you'll learn from that. So, and then any websites or courses, I have a whole video on this, best data analyst courses to take, best free courses to take. So I go and check those out. But there are a ton. So Ryan asks, hey, do you think that learning tools like SQL, Excel, Tableau from a recognized school is more beneficial on a resume rather than learning all on your own? Of course. If you're at Harvard and you're learning, you have a degree in, let's say, computer science, and you're learning all the skills, of course that's going to be better than learning it on your own and not having a college degree. Just it's brand name, and you're absolutely going to be in a better position, 100%. This is a good one. Bradley asks, I'm finding that a lot of data analyst jobs are wanting 2 to 3 years of experience, proven record as a data analyst. How do you get your foot in the door when everybody wants seasoned veterans? This is by and far one of the biggest questions that I get asked all the time. And I think it's 100% true. Everybody wants an entry-level data analyst or a junior data analyst that already has like a year to 3 years experience, and it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. But you have to understand that, when they're hiring somebody, they are going to try to get the absolute best they can for the cheapest amount of money they can. So if they're doing an entry-level job and they can get someone with 3 years experience and they can get it for a fraction of the price than they could pay a mid-level, they're going to do it. They're thinking it's just a business mentality. So if you are seeing that on job applications, I would not be scared to apply, because you never know how many applicants they're getting, the quality of applicants that they're getting, how many people they're actually bringing in for interviews. You might as well apply and just see what happens, because a lot of times they want 2 to 3 years, but they're willing to settle for somebody who's right out the bat, but has a really good portfolio, has good, looks like they have really good skills, very personable. That stuff goes a long way. So in order to get your foot in the door and compete against those quote unquote seasoned veterans that could be applying for those jobs, a portfolio will go a long way, just in the terms of you can prove that you know how to do these things. You can prove that, if they like your resume for everything else that it has, they'll typically click on your link to a portfolio or your GitHub. And what it's going to show them is, while they're walking through it, this guy or girl really knows SQL. Man, that's a really good project with Python. That's the stuff we use in our job, and you might get lucky. And so I recommend really investing in the resume, really investing in your personal portfolio. All right, I'm going to do just maybe a couple more questions, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Asa asks, how do you balance learning more and having kids in a career? Right now, I am currently learning more of the ETL side of things, more of the data engineering stuff, and stuff like Azure Data Factory, SSIS, kind of the more advanced things for the kind of work that I'm doing. Just because I really want to upskill. I really want to be able to understand that stuff at a higher level. And the way that I balance that is when the kids got to go to sleep eventually. And right now they're all asleep. And so, I balance it by using my time very efficiently. During the day, I'm in meetings for work, and then I'm helping with the kids, meetings for work, helping with the kids, and eventually they go to sleep. And then I'm finishing all the work that I couldn't get done during the day. And then I spend my other time doing YouTube videos and my other time learning. And I just depends on, where I am during the week. And so I'm extremely busy, but I find time and I make time for these things. I know they'll pay off in the long run. And you also asked favorite dessert and why. Let me tell you something. My favorite dessert by far is pie. And anybody who's had a chocolate mousse pie will agree with me. And if you don't, you're wrong. But you will agree with me that that is the best pie that has ever been made. I can eat an entire pie myself. My father-in-law, he has seen it. I've eaten an entire pie by myself. I don't feel bad about it. It is an addiction. And I appreciate that question, because I feel like people needed to know that. Are you planning on becoming a data, James asks, are you planning on becoming a data engineer? Is that an easy thing to advance to? I don't think so. I think data engineering is, as of right now, way above my skill level. But I am extremely interested in data engineering. And I think that, and I will make a whole video on how to transition, or the things that you'll need to learn. And that's kind of why I'm also learning it, because I'm going to make a video on it. And I personally just have a huge interest in the ETL side of things. And I really, really love that stuff. I don't think I'm going to become a data engineer. I really don't. I think I'm going to go more into management eventually, and that kind of thing. That's probably what I'm going to do. Lily essay said, pecan pie, microwave for 15 seconds with Cool Whip on top. While it melts, it is pure heaven on earth. I disagree. Pecan pie is probably the worst dessert I've ever had. And I grew up in North Carolina, and everybody would make fun of me for not eating pecan pie. And I say pecan, not pecan. It is pecan pie, and I'm 100% stuck in my way. I hate pecan pie. No offense. I'm not trying to belittle your favorite dessert. It's just I literally can't eat it. I cannot eat it at all. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I am sorry. All right, guys. That is going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are amazing. Thank you for joining me for an hour. Some of you stayed the whole time. Thank you for joining me. I will do more of these in the future. I will say I wanted to do almost like one of these a month, but I found that if I'm just doing one a month, I'm doing 4. I'm about to start doing 8 videos a month. I don't want it to take up one of those slots. So maybe every other month, I'm going to try to do one of these live things. And hopefully that works out. I know some people really like the Q&A to kind of just actually talk and see each other. And so, I like it too. So thank you guys for joining me. You guys are awesome. If you have any other questions, feel free to message me on LinkedIn, or feel free to email me. I am always responding to people's emails. It's alextheanalyst95@gmail.com. So send your questions, let me know. If you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon. I don't have any available one-on-one sessions anymore, but if you just want to, provide $5 or something like that, I will accept it. I will. But yeah, thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome. Have a great night or morning, depending on where you are. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Oh gosh, that didn't work. Goodbye.